changes that the culture wasn't going to accept. So you do it in a smart way where the culture will be much more accepting of the change. You don't change everything. You change the things that only need to be changed, and you understand the culture.
Well, yes. For example, they had this process called de-Baathification. Anybody who was in
exactly
Ba'ath Party was let go. Now, a lot of those people were doing it because they had no choice, not because they believed in Saddam Hussein's ideology. And a lot of them were important to keeping the country together. They were engineers. When they were rebuilding the country, there were all kinds of people who knew about the infrastructure who could have helped repairing. And they said, well, no, they're Baathists. We're not going to hire them. And also they let go most of the Iraqi military, including letting them take their weapons with them. And they became the backbone initially of the resistance to the U.S. occupation. So you almost couldn't have done a worse job. And the State Department actually had done all these elaborate plans about what should happen during and after the occupation. And Rumsfeld and his circle said, oh, we don't need that. We're just going to go in.
We're going to save money on that part.
Yeah, we're going to go in. We're going to overthrow the government. Democracy will bloom. Case closed. So they didn't even want a plan for the aftermath. And then, of course, they gave the contracts to all these big companies instead of smaller companies or Iraqis who had local knowledge and could have done it much more efficiently.
So I was watching you on a panel, and it was brought up that our military power is just so immense, and our technology and things, and that the way people in other countries view us is they're just terrified of us and what we're capable of. How would you say that's accurate, or how would you really portray that?
Well, I think, countries that are portrayed as our adversaries, countries like Iran, probably are, very concerned, and I'm sure there's a level of fear. And some of the countries, there's also sort of this level of pride, like we're not going to let you scare us, and we're not going to let you change our direction. But both elements exist, and certainly the fact that the United States has fought more wars than any other country since World War II creates a lot of anxiety around the world, and also in many places anti-U.S. sentiment.
Sure, and that's the danger of us being always involved in all these wars, is that it creates almost this allegiance of people wanting to take us down.
Yeah, I mean, we need a total kind of reversal of how we invest in foreign policy. And, there's over history, a lot of positive things the United States has done in the world, but they tend to get that vision of the United States gets muddied and overshadowed when so much of your presence is military.
Well, and to be fair, we have done a lot of good things, but lately we've been almost too aggressive and so those people forget what good things we've done if lately we're not doing as many good things. If we're doing the negative is overshadowing some of the good things we've done in the past as well.
Yeah, I fear that's the case. Yeah.
Well, what do we do to get things back into balance? What would, if you had the power to do something, like just take over and you had a magic wand and say, and everybody could listen to you, what could we do? How do we get it back into balance and be healthy?
Well, I think we'd have to weaken the lobby. So there's a movement afoot to try to overturn Citizens United, which lets unlimited money into politics. And that's a hard fight, because they need a constitutional amendment. But it's gaining some momentum, and I think it's got to be on the agenda, because as long as a few people can write big checks and influence entire directions of
that's
elections,
ridiculous.
That undermines our democracy, obviously. I think the revolving door should be dealt with. I think one proposal was a strict 5-year limit. You have to wait 5 years before you work for industry, which would mean at least your Rolodex wasn't quite as warm, and you'd possibly find other employment. You wouldn't just assume you were going to go into industry. So that's been proposed, and I think I would like to see something like that happen. I think we need a new strategy that doesn't say we have to go everywhere in the world and fight every battle. I think we need a more defensive strategy, and we need to let allies in regions of concern do more in their own defense, because they're closer to the scene. They can sort of assess the threats. Even now with Ukraine, a lot of European countries are not increasing their military spending because they have other priorities. So it's, they've made a different assessment of that. I mean, countries bordering Russia have increased their spending, but the rest of Europe, for the large part, is holding steady. So, I think the idea that we should be not only the policeman, but the one who defines what security is for other countries, I think, feeds a lot of this overspending. Then, of course, we should force the Pentagon to pass an audit, and I think they should withhold a certain amount of money to units that can't pass an audit. So there's a whole range of things. I think there should be penalties for cost overruns instead of just letting the companies run rampant. And there should be sort of an independent assessment of what do we actually need. There's an independent assessment office in the Pentagon that looks at whether the weapons are performing well, but that doesn't have a lot of enforcement capability. But there's not really enough in the way of strategy coming from people who aren't making money from the military-industrial complex, either in industry or career military. So
unbiased people, get people in there that don't have the money that have such an incentive for making money off of this.
That aren't going to earn more money if we're more warlike.
Yeah. How about some rules around what can be considered confidential?
Yes, I think opening that up would make it a lot easier for people to understand that not all this money is being spent to defend us. And I think the clearer that becomes, the easier it would be to rein in the Pentagon's budget.
And we could probably be better, right? I mean, if we could have a stronger military and by just being smaller.
I think if the military was smaller, better trained, we weren't trying to fight everywhere all the time, we cut out a lot of the waste, we built weapons that actually were for the purpose of the missions and not just for the purpose of feeding this or that company, you could have a smaller, less expensive military that would be considerably more effective. And also, ideally, you would make better decisions about when military force makes any sense at all. And sometimes when you have a big military, it's like, well, here it is. I guess we should use it. And that's, sort of a very backwards way to make your foreign policy.
Well, we could be more effective. We could be safer. And then we could be investing more in our own infrastructure and things that make us stronger at home as well, because we're going to be safer if our infrastructure and our manufacturing and all these other things are strong.
Exactly. In fact, that was another one of Eisenhower's points. One of the reasons he didn't want to spend too much on the Pentagon was because he felt, the ultimate base of our security was our economy. Having a strong economy, having a healthy, well-educated population was the foundation of any kind of security that would be meaningful.
Well, this has been a really great conversation. And how can people get a copy of your book, Prophets of War? And do you have any new stuff coming out?
I've mostly been writing short pieces, essays and such, which are available on our website, ciponline.org. And then my book, it's a couple years old now, so it's basically kind of an Amazon, or if you don't like Amazon, another online, purchasing option.
And you have articles I've noticed on Huffington Post, on New York Times. You're all over the place.
I try to put out as much as I can, just because it's the other side of the equation gets a lot of play. So I think the more there's critical, independent voices that people can find, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, that's great. And so once again, what is your website?
It's www.ciponline.org.
Okay, and we'll have that on the radio page as well with your, so they can find out more information about you and they can go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today.
You've been listening to Business Game Changers with host Sarah Westall. Tune in each Monday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, as Sarah brings you leading experts, visionaries, and newsmakers who provide the best commentary on big issues and cutting-edge innovations. Sarah's 20 years as a business executive will help you think like an entrepreneur with expertise, energy, and attitude. Tune in Mondays at 12 noon Pacific Time. And learn more about Sarah at sarahwestall.com today.